In the woods behind his grandmother's house in Odenton, Maryland, a young boy stumbled upon something that would change his life forever. A hidden shack, a strange book filled with rituals and invocations, and as he would later claim, a doorway to hell itself. This is the story of John Drenner Jr., a man who said he spent 15 years locked in a brutal invisible war, fighting something he could not see and something he couldn't understand, yet it haunted him for the rest of his life. It began in the early 2000s. John loved exploring the dense woods near his grandmother's home. They were thick with vines and pine, a maze of overgrowth that felt a world apart. With his younger sister Cheryl tagging along, they turned those woods into their personal playground. They found the usual things: fallen trees, animal bones, maybe the remnants of a hunter's camp. But then one afternoon, something else caught their attention: a shack. Not a cabin, not even a proper building, just a decaying structure, its roof half collapsed, windows boarded, vines swallowing its frame. John pushed aside the rotted boards and stepped inside. The air was cold. What he saw next never left him. There were jars filled with strange liquids, melted candles fused to the floorboards, and a book, an old journal, brittle and faded, its pages covered in what looked like symbols and strange languages, drawings of ritual circles, notes written in something that didn't look English or any language he knew. Cheryl remembers standing at the doorway, watching her brother flip through those pages. She says later that night, something strange happened. She woke up and heard John whispering in the dark, speaking a language she didn't recognize. Then, suddenly, he began to bleed from the nose. She said he didn't even notice. He just kept whispering. The next morning, John barely remembered it. They brushed it off as a weird dream. But from that moment on, things began to change. Once back home in Pasadena, John's life started to unravel. It began with nightmares. He dreamt of shadowy figures watching him, whispering things he couldn't repeat when he woke. He'd jolt awake screaming, drenched in sweat, beyond the usual childhood fears. Then came the scratches. Thin red lines would appear on his arms overnight, as if something had clawed him while he slept. At first, his family thought it was self-inflicted or maybe a rash, but when the marks appeared on his back, deep and deliberate, that explanation fell apart. He described the sensation of something crawling into bed beside him, the mattress sinking under invisible weight, cold air brushing his skin. Doors began to slam on their own. Lights flickered constantly, and objects moved when no one was in the room. And then came the voice. John says it called itself Legion. If that name sounds familiar, it should. In the Bible, when Jesus encounters a possessed man, the demon inside says, "My name is Legion, for we are many." According to John, the voice said, "You belong to us. We will not leave." At first, his family dismissed it as stress or imagination. But when they started hearing the screams at night, real guttural screams, they began to fear something else might be happening. By his teenage years, John's situation had become unbearable. He woke up with deep bruises, often in places he couldn't reach himself. His reflection in mirrors started to frighten him. He swore he saw eyes that weren't his own staring back. He began losing time. Hours would vanish. He'd wake up standing in another part of the house or outside barefoot in the cold, with no memory of how he got there. Doctors called it dissociation. John called it possession. And just when he thought it couldn't get worse, the entity turned its attention towards someone else. John's girlfriend at the time, Mary, was the first outsider to witness what was happening. One night, Mary awoke in the dark. She couldn't move, completely paralyzed, but wide awake. She tried to scream, but nothing came out. And that's when she saw it. A shadow crouched at the foot of her bed, eyes glowing faint red. John was in the next room and says he heard her muffled gasps. When he rushed in, Mary bolted upright, trembling, saying she saw something crawl toward her, then vanish. After that, Mary refused to stay alone with him again. Whatever had attached itself to John, it seemed to feed off fear, and it wasn't done yet. Through his late teens and into adulthood, John's life spiraled. He tried everything to live a normal life: school, work, relationships, but the disturbances followed him everywhere. He'd wake with scratches and bruises, hear voices in the walls, smell sulfur in empty rooms. He attempted suicide more than once, convinced death might finally free him. But every time, something stopped him. He said it was like Legion wouldn't let him go. He spent time in hospitals and psychiatric wards where doctors diagnosed him with trauma-related disorders and sleep paralysis. But no treatment stopped the attacks. In his own words, "It wasn't just in my mind, I could feel it. Hands around my throat, pressure on my chest. It wanted me to give up." John lost friends who couldn't handle being near him. He lost faith in God, and he began to believe the only way out was spiritual. In desperation, John turned to the church. Most pastors were kind, but dismissive. They said he needed therapy, not an exorcism. In his final attempt to end it, John contacted Bill Bean, a Maryland-based minister known for performing spiritual deliverances and exorcisms. Bean listened carefully to John's story. Then he told him something chilling. "I've seen this before. We're going to fight it." The deliverance took place late one night in John's Pasadena home. As soon as they began, the atmosphere changed. The lights flickered, the temperature dropped. The room felt dense, suffocating. Bill Bean began praying aloud. John convulsed. His voice shifted into a low growl, speaking in a language neither recognized. Bean later described the moment. "I felt a dark force filling the room. I could hear it, and it was angry." As the prayers intensified, John screamed the name, Legion. Then the air filled with a deep vibration, a humming that made the walls tremble. Bean commanded, "In the name of Jesus Christ, leave this body." John's body jolted, then went completely still. The candles flickered once, and the house fell silent. When John opened his eyes, he said the pressure was gone. The room felt lighter. For the first time in years, he could breathe. For a while, John felt peace. The nightmares stopped. The scratches stopped. He could sleep through the night again. But even freedom, he says, comes with scars. In Season 7 of the paranormal series A Haunting, viewers were introduced to his story, and it would leave a deep impression. His chilling tale of the Maryland boy who claimed he was tormented by a dark, malevolent force. In the years that followed, John quietly disappeared from the public eye. He didn't seek fame or publicity. There were interests in acting and MMA fighting, but there were no interviews, no follow-up documentaries, just silence. John did help at least one other household besides his own case, the Toller family, with their own haunting. Then in early 2024, heartbreaking news surfaced online. A family fundraiser appeared on GoFundMe titled "In Memory of John Drenner Jr." The organizer, his ex-wife Gabrielle Drenner, with whom he had 3 young children, shared that John had passed away in another state and that they were trying to bring him home for services. Though the post didn't mention how he died, it made one thing clear: John's story had come to a tragic end. Friends and members of the paranormal community shared their condolences on social media, describing John as kind, compassionate, and deeply spiritual, someone who had carried unimaginable trauma throughout his life. Some reflected that the darkness John battled may have been more than just supernatural. It was also emotional, psychological, and very real. And while speculation about the cause of his death has circulated online, no official report or obituary has ever confirmed the details. Out of respect for his memory and that of his family, the truth about John's final years remained private. Whether it was the manifestation of trauma or an authentic encounter with something demonic, one truth echoes through it all. Curiosity opened a door, and once open, not every door can be closed. What we do know is this: John Drenner's story wasn't just about demons or possession. It was about the lifelong impact of fear and a lifelong struggle to overcome it. Whether one believes in the paranormal or not, John's story asks us to confront an uncomfortable possibility that the boundary between the outer world and the inner world is far thinner than we'd like to believe. Some struggles don't announce themselves with footsteps and voices, but come from places we barely understand, shaping our beliefs over a period of time. And if such darkness can exist in one life, it leaves us to wonder what else may be moving unseen within our own. If you enjoy deep dives into paranormal cases, subscribe here for more true stories of hauntings, the supernatural, and unexplained phenomena. And in the meantime, remember, stay spooky.